Welcome, lovely chosen ones. Heaven eventually stops muttering warnings and begins swinging consequences. This narrative starts at that very time. Because what happened to you was not a miscommunication. Miscommunication is one of those instances that people choose to ignore. No, this was organized disdain disguised as concern, brutality packaged as compassion, and torture disguised as a joke. These folks did not fall into evil. They dived head first, arms wide extended, certain that God was not looking. Spoiler alert, he was watching with HD clarity, zoomed in, and taking notes like an investment gator who pays attention to every detail. Here's a fact that will strike you differently. Psychology demonstrates that when a group works to abuse one innocent individual, they automatically connect via shared guilt, thinking that the damage is justified. They did not unify because you posed a danger. They came together because they needed each other to feel less embarrassed of what they were doing to you. However, the human mind can only conceal wrongdoing if the spiritual world does not participate in illusion. That's why God is upset. You weren't working with folks who made random errors. You were dealing with folks who practiced their evil. They planned their sentences, honed their emotions, and delivered their malice. Actors auditioning for greatest villain in a career of terrible choices. To be honest, some of them took their roles too seriously. If there was an award ceremony in hell, a few people would give acceptance speeches. But here's a narrative surprise they never saw coming. They tormented an innocent while heaven looked on, like a watchful father sitting in the front row, waiting for someone, anybody, to try their kid. They assumed your quiet indicated fragility. They saw your benevolence as license. They assumed your humility meant you had no support. They were unaware that you were spiritually encircled by forces that do not need flexing to be feared. And now God is more than simply furious. He's aggressively correcting the narrative that they created. He is unraveling their falsehoods thread by thread, revealing what they did in the shadows and demanding respect for the same name they attempted to bury. This is not karma. This isn't a coincidence. This is a heavenly retribution to human wrongdoing. So hold on, for what comes next isn't just justice. It's restitution, restoration, revelation, and a level of heavenly anger that makes even the angels sit up straighter. Number 1. God is angered because they attempted to punish cleanliness as if it were a crime. When someone damages someone who has done nothing wrong, a distinct kind of rage arises in the spiritual world. Not the fury that stems from ego or pride, but the rage that comes from watching innocent people targeted. That is what happened to you. You weren't going about creating trouble or making people feel inferior. You were just living your life, being yourself, following your own path. However, for whatever reason, they saw your purity as suspicious, inconvenient, or disrespectful. They couldn't take how your presence revealed what they were concealing. Your honesty exposed flaws in their schemes. Your heart made their bitterness seem superfluous. Your serenity made their turmoil seem juvenile rather than elevating it to your level. They pulled you through experiences you had no business having. They punished you for characteristics they secretly wished they had. The bizarre aspect is that they sought to justify it, as if compassion is something that should be questioned, or as if innocent people should be brought into court without proof. God does not toy with it. People who damage individuals who aren't battling, scheming, or pretending will face a specific punishment in heaven. When someone with a pure heart is punished like a criminal for just being themselves, it strikes a spiritual chord. They didn't just injure you. They insulted the one who created you. They behaved as if they had the power to evaluate a soul they did not make. God saw every second of that injustice. They attempted to stick to what he wanted. Finally, pure. They attempted to make your character seem unattractive so that theirs wouldn't stand out. And they attempted to throw a load of guilt on someone who had not earned it, deserved it, or contributed to it. Heaven does not allow such perversion. That is why the response they are receiving is not random. It's a corrective, a heavenly reminder that purity is not a flaw, and innocence is never a crime. Second, they mismanaged a soul. Heaven gave his personal endorsement. And this is the transgression that God will not overlook. Certain individuals on this globe walk with a quiet approbation from God that others cannot readily notice. You are one of them. Your life has always had indications of protection, redirections, and events that made little sense to others. You were not going through life alone. You were being directed, protected, and developed by a power much greater than yourself. But those who damaged you couldn't see it. Or perhaps they noticed it, but dismissed it. In any case, they treated someone who had received divine approval as if you were throwaway. They treated you carelessly, as if you were an item to be used and discarded. They behaved as if your gentle heart was a weakness and your tolerance was foolishness. Like your empathy rendered you vulnerable to manipulation. They tested you, pushed you, depleted you, and attempted to shatter you, all while believing you lacked spiritual support. They didn't realize that when God places his hand on someone, he takes their abuse personally. He didn't only see the contempt, he tallied it. They touched a life that was not theirs to harm. They tampered with a destiny that they did not create. They entered a novel without reading the section where heaven had already taken you as his own. That's where they crossed the line. People forget that heavenly sanction does not imply perfection. It represents purpose. And when someone attempts to destroy someone on purpose, they find themselves battling God himself. Their worst mistake wasn't lying, betraying, manipulating, or being harsh. It was feeling that they had the authority to mishandle what God valued. They assumed they were dealing with simply another individual. They were not. They were dealing with someone who had spiritual favor but did not acknowledge it. And now the repercussions aren't just random disasters. They are direct answers to the contempt they shown. God will not ignore what they did, not because you sought restitution, but heaven will not allow anybody to mishandle what it has already gifted. Number 3, God's wrath rises because they demanded allegiance while inflicting your wounds. One of the most brazen types of hypocrisy is expecting dedication, support, and unshakable commitment from someone who is breaching their own rules. This is precisely what happened to you. The same individuals who injured you wanted you to support them. They wanted you to forgive immediately, forget easily, and go on as if you weren't bleeding from the hands you were reaching for. They acted entitled to your presence, despite the fact that they were the ones inflicting your suffering. They sought your heart, but instead gave you tension. They desired your confidence, but gave you treachery. They sought your understanding, but just provided you excuses. They caused the wounds, then were outraged when you couldn't keep them together. Throughout it all, they painted you as the ungrateful one. They had the bizarre conviction that you owed them something, as if your love were an infinite resource that they could deplete without ever having to replace. God noticed how hard you worked to make things work. He observed you continue to choose grace in situations when others might have chosen vengeance. He saw you swallow your pride, hurt, and bewilderment in order to maintain the peace. You were present even while you were pushed away. You remained behind, even after they have perverted your statements. You remained faithful, even when devotion was the last thing you got. But loyalty is not a one-sided agreement. God does not bless partnerships in which one person is expected to bear all of the burden while the other does all of the harm. These folks seem to be doing you a service by being in your life. Yet in reality, you were the one who held everything together. They had no idea how much of your power they were using until God began taking you from places you weren't intended to bleed. That is when God's wrath comes in. He does not remain quiet when a good-hearted individual is being emotionally exploited. He does not allow anyone to demand your commitment while delivering grief. When someone misuses access to your heart, heaven's steps in their entitlement were not overlooked. And now neither will your healing. Fourth, the brutality became the proof against them, rather than your responses. One thing people often forget is that God does not conduct investigations in the same manner that humans do. Humans are easily sidetracked by emotions, gossip, looks, and who can tell the most dramatic or loudest narrative. However, God is concerned with the cause rather than the outcome. He focuses on the moment things were put in motion, not the turmoil that followed. And in your case, the reality was brutally simple. You were responding to the anguish they caused. They were the architects of the devastation, and heaven took notice of everything from the beginning. They attempted to change the script by pretending surprised at your comments. They claimed to be victims while covering up their own crimes. They mistreated you and then mocked you for having natural human emotions to being harmed. You might have sobbed, remained silent, walked away, snapped, or attempted to explain yourself. None of it altered the fundamental truth they discovered initially. They put the seed and assumed the tree developed on its own. Here's something they didn't anticipate. God does not evaluate the wounded's reactions. He determines the purpose of the person who inflicted the wound. He saw how they had plotted the insult. He saw how they murmured behind your back while beaming in your direction. He saw how they caused confusion before acting as peacemakers. And he saw that every harm you carried originated with their hands, not yours. You didn't lash out. You were surviving. You were not dramatic. You were protecting yourself. You were not unstable. You were overpowered by the repeated strikes. They refused to accept responsibility for heaven separating response from initiative. That is why they, not you, bear the brunt of the judgment. They positioned themselves like victims while hunting. They pursued, provoked, manipulated, and cornered. You then cried foul when you eventually answered in the manner that any person would. But their malice had already written the tale before you said a single word. It became evidence, witness, and undisputed fact. God used to legitimize you while the hunter falsely claimed to be the prey. Heaven reveals the tracks, and this time, every track goes directly back to them. Number 5. They tormented you as if your pain would raise their position. But all it did was reveal their spiritual poverty. Some individuals feel that standing on someone else helps them go higher. They believe that if they can injure, disgrace, or undermine you, they will immediately advance in the sight of others. That perverted worldview is precisely what drove their conduct against you. They weren't just harsh for no cause. They were harsh because they believed your agony would increase their power. They felt that if you looked shattered, they would seem powerful. If you seem perplexed, they will appear smart. If you seem to be harmed, they would appear justified. Their whole feeling of value was based on seeing you degraded. However, the cosmos does not work according to that reasoning. Spiritual rules do not encourage destruction for the sake of ego. What they didn't comprehend was that every time they tried to pull you down, they were showing the emptiness inside themselves. Your pain did not uplift them. It made their goals clear. The more they sought to embarrass you, the more they revealed their own insecurities. The more they attempted to harm you, the more clear their flaws were. Someone who is genuinely strong never needs to crush others. Innocent, someone who is highly esteemed. Never embarrass someone who has done nothing to deserve it. Their violence did not create a kingdom. It constructed a case, an argument against their character, motivations, and spiritual state. People started to recognize them for who they really were. Not leaders, not strong personalities, not powerful persons, but individuals seeking affirmation that they could never obtain on their own. And the fact is that when individuals attempt to raise themselves by bringing someone else down, they reveal how little they have inside themselves. That is why God opposes the whole method. Heaven would never support a rising based on someone else's pain. God does not tolerate spiritual leeches, individuals who deplete others in order to feel alive. He does not condone abuse, manipulation, or humiliation masked as power. And he particularly does not tolerate his innocent ones being exploited as stepping stones for damaged egos. They felt harming you was a quick way to gain prestige. Instead, it became a mirror, revealing everyone's spiritual bankruptcy. Their acts did not uplift them. They just proved how low they genuinely were. 6th, God's anger is unleashed when a kind spirit becomes a playground for the wicked. There's a unique sort of rage in heaven when someone nice is attacked merely because they don't fight nasty. Some people mistake softness for surrender, gentleness, a lack of knowledge and tolerance, or weakness. They persuaded themselves that since you didn't snap back, yell, or retaliate, you were simple to manipulate, push, and control. They saw your tranquil spirit as an open field where they could unload their baggage, bitterness, and brokenness. And they crossed a spiritual boundary that was never supposed to be crossed. The humble are not weak. They are protected. They're the ones God personally protects because their hearts mirror the aspects of Him that the world often overlooks: compassion, mercy, humility, and grace. However, the wicked notice these attributes and believe they have discovered a playground where they may practice their cruelty without fear of repercussions. They see gentle souls as emotional punching bags, and they believe they can take advantage without being held responsible. They didn't realize your restraint was motivated by anything other than fear. It was God urging you not to bring yourself down to their level. While they missed radio quiet, heaven was reading their thoughts. God seen how they pushed you to your limits in order to test whether you would break. He saw how they continuously tried your kindness, seeking to turn it into something terrible. He watched how they saw your goodwill as an invitation to insult you. That is why divine judgment began to move. Not because you wept, not because you fought, but because they used your tenderness as an excuse to unleash their evil. Do not provoke the meek. Isn't it a poetic warning? It is a spiritual rule. Once that line is crossed, consequences do not appear by themselves. They accelerate. God does not let his tender-hearted ones become emotional playgrounds for the spiritually wayward. And when individuals take advantage of someone's kind mindset, they can do anything they want without worry. Heaven intervenes with a reaction that cannot be ignored. They assumed you had no backup. They assumed your silence signified defeat. They saw your tranquility as passivity. Heaven is now using them as an example of what happens when brutality, blunders, and tenderness are misinterpreted as weakness. And the message is being given loudly and clearly. Number 7. They didn't simply abuse you. They tried to alter the meaning of your life. Mistreatment alone is terrible, but their actions went well beyond plain brutality. They attempted to change the entire definition of who you are. They were not content with hurting your sentiments or disturbing your calm. They wanted to change how the world perceived you. They attempted to shape your identity into a twisted tale that benefited them. They wanted others to assume you were the troublemaker, unstable, tough, and unpredictable. They needed to portray you as the storm so that they could play the calm, innocent victims standing in the rain. But here's the fact they refused to confront. You were not the issue. You revealed the issue. Your presence shattered their pretenses. Your candor upended their life. Your spirit made their shallowness apparent. Instead of learning from you, they attempted to eradicate the aspect of you that challenged their comfort. They attempted to alter your existence because seeing the truth would have forced them to face themselves. And that's precisely where they entered territory. God takes it personally when someone destroys your character. They're not just insulting you. They are demeaning the person who made you. They are behaving as if they have the power to rename something he has already defined. They are attempting to overthrow heavenly design with human instability. That is not simply rudeness. It's called revolt. They utilize gossip, exaggeration, half-truths, and outright falsehoods to create an image of you that never was. They made you seem violent, unpredictable, or emotionally unstable, all while disregarding the truth that their actions are what caused the turmoil in the first place. They wanted you to seem guilty so that they could feel justified. But God does not remain mute when someone attempts to alter his work. He steps in. He debunks misleading narratives. He reveals the hidden motivations. He corrects the falsehoods using evidence, time, elevation, and clarity. And the same lips that attempted to define you will now be compelled to admit the truth about who you truly are. They attempt to rewrite your identity. God is redefining their influence. And number 8, God is enraged because they turned your life into a battleground while appearing to be helpless bystanders. People who sow havoc and then claim they had nothing to do with it exhibit a distinct kind of wickedness. They were not clueless. They were not perplexed. They were not innocent. They were the ones who lit the matches, pushed the buttons, whispered falsehoods, and heightened the tension. Then they stood in the background, startled as the fire spread. They created the drama, yet feigned to be appalled by the results. They set the trap, but claimed they had no clue how you were trapped in it. That kind of hypocrisy emits a spiritual odor that heaven cannot tolerate. These folks did not unintentionally injure you. They were intentional. They staged the emotional injuries while claiming to be spectators. They behaved as if life was just occurring to them, as if things had mysteriously spun out of control with their fingerprints all over the damage. And when you eventually responded, when you exhibited the tiredness, pain, or exasperation that anybody would feel, they put on their show with wide eyes and innocent smiles. What have we done? Energy. They were well aware that they were responsible for your pain. That is why God is so angry. He does not just judge deeds. He evaluates intent. And they intended to undermine you without being held responsible. They wanted the world to perceive them as calm, tranquil people caught up in someone else's storm, although privately boasting about the destruction they did. They enjoyed playing the victim because it enabled them to avoid responsibilities while also gaining sympathy. But heaven has never been deceived by false innocence. God has a higher tolerance for obvious immorality than for covert hypocrisy. At the very least, a wicked person is honest about their identity. These folks, however, concealed their wickedness beneath a mask, expecting God and everyone else to applaud their act. Hypocrisy like that reveals a soul that is spiritually empty, ethically hollow, and entirely detached from reality. They turned your life into a battleground and then pretended to be passive observers. That's the bit God won't let slip. Someone who causes harm and then acts puzzled when challenged is precisely the kind of person that heaven deals with publicly. The mask they wore is gradually breaking, revealing their true character. Not because you want vengeance, but because God is weary of their actions. Number 9. Heaven steps in when injustice becomes a public right. There is a distinction between one individual acting out of jealousy or resentment and a whole community banding together to abuse someone who has never offended them. What occurred to you was neither a silent betrayal or a concealed transgression. It became a group performance. They did not just harm you in secret and go on. They used your misery to unite around gossip, laugh at, and pass around as fun. It became a tradition for them, a frequent activity, almost a hobby. And that's where heaven comes in. Because injustice transformed into a show is a direct breach of spiritual order. They weren't messing up. They were partnering up. They gathered in secret chats, exchanged ugly glances, traded tales about you, exaggerated everything, and fed off each other's negative energy. Mistreatment became a collaborative activity, while cruelty became a community. They turned your misery into a topic of discussion, a joke, a highlight, or a reference. The more they participated, the braver they grew. The more they laughed, the more they tormented your soul, the more they agreed with one another and persuaded themselves that their actions were justifiable. However, heaven watched the whole group, not just one person or deed. Heaven tallied each participant, facilitator, instigator, and quiet observer. When cruelty becomes communal, when causing injury to someone becomes a community event, the judgment rests on the collective rather than the individual. God does not tolerate concerted wickedness. He does not turn a blind eye to people banding together to condemn someone. Group maltreatment bears more weight since it demonstrates that many hearts consented to breach what was holy. And here is when their scheme fails. Every time they laughed at your suffering, they increased their own self-judgment. Every time they cheered one another, they demonstrated how spiritually empty they were. Every time they added another insult or anecdote, heaven's case became stronger. You were subjected to more than one person's brutality. You dealt with a large audience. And when injustice becomes a routine, heaven intervenes openly in the same manner that they caused your suffering. A spectacle is the same manner that your vindication will be seen. Their oneness and depravity sparked unity and a heavenly answer. Number 10. They misjudged God's seriousness in protecting the innocent. They believed your charity meant you were vulnerable. They believed your sympathy rendered you exposed. They thought that your innocence made you simple to control, manipulate, use, and break. What they didn't realize was that God provides a different type of covering on people with pure souls. And when that shielding is breached, the repercussions change from personal to heavenly. You were never designed to endure at the level they have dragged you to. The severity of your anguish was not part of God's plan. It was the outcome of their decisions. Your heart was not designed for betrayal, humiliation, or cruelty. You were born with the desire to serve, have a purpose, and make a difference. Nonetheless, they continued crossing borders you didn't even realize existed. Heaven established boundaries to safeguard the innocent from the spiritually irresponsible. And now for the portion they never considered. God always warns before acting. Those minor hesitations they had before doing you harm. Those unsettling emotions, nightmares, unusual delays, and moments. They did not feel right, crossing certain bounds. These were heaven's quiet warnings. Divine warnings are spiritual red flags, indicating that hurting you would cost them more than they could afford. However, ignorance gave them confidence. Pride blinded them. Their egos drove them to be brave. They disregarded every warning, indicator, and instinct that told them not to touch this one. And when humans reject divine counsel, the consequences are disastrous. Not because God is cruel, but because God considers it his personal mission to safeguard the innocent. They weren't simply joking with you. They were fiddling with something. Heaven was guarded. They were not just hurting your emotions. They were harming someone. God separated them aside the minute they breached the covering. They triggered repercussions from which they cannot escape, pause, or negotiate. Divine justice does not miss its aim, and it never comes empty-handed. They underestimated you because they had no idea who was standing behind you. They miscalculated the cost of offending someone who embodies purity. They underestimated spiritual principles that protect the innocent. However, the equilibrium is now being restored by divine correction rather than retaliation. Their conduct determined the judgment. Heaven merely enforces it. God's anger isn't about punishing people. It's about regaining the dignity they took away from you. God isn't motivated by wrath. He is motivated by justice. The fury you're seeing isn't motivated by vengeance. It's based on restoration. What happened to your name was not an accident. It was planned, orchestrated, and repeated. They distorted your identity such that it scarcely resembled the reality. They insulted your character with confidence. They dragged your name through discussions, group chats, and whispers designed to reduce your value. They were resolved to stain what God had made clean, and God took it personally. Your dignity was never intended to be a public sacrifice for their enjoyment. Your persona was never meant to be their playground. They utilized your name to boost their own egos, influence narratives, and get sympathy. However, they underestimated something essential. God does not allow the innocent to be misdefined. When someone lies about a chosen one, they are not just misrepresenting a reputation. They're trying to change what God wrote. That is why the restoration of your name is neither quiet nor covert. It is obvious. Heaven is correcting the story that they made. Every life story spoken about you is being replaced with the truth. Every myth they created is being demolished one by one. Every false impression they propagate reveals the truth about who you are. People who used to tell falsehoods will now tell the truth in a different tone. People will use your name with care now, not because you are dangerous, but because they have understood God is concerned with how you are portrayed. That understanding fosters a distinct kind of respect, one that cannot be faked or coerced. It is the reverence that comes from seeing divine discipline in real time. Your reputation is being improved. Your dignity is being healed. Your identity is being restored to its proper place, not via your efforts, explanations, or defense, but by God's involvement. They attempted to remain in you indefinitely, but heaven has the last say. Your name will soar in ways that make it clear that God was changing the script. They anticipated you to fall, yet you kept climbing. This is why divine justice has accelerated. They anticipated your breaking moment. They focused more on your wounds than on your will. They confidently expected your doom. In their universe, suffering ruins people. They didn't grasp that. In your world, grief shows your true self. They expected you to disintegrate, yet you always stood up. Not because you were strong every day, but because heaven would not let you remain on the earth. They were waiting for the moment you would crack, fold, vanish, or submit. They were hoping to witness the disgrace and devour you whole, but you didn't provide the performance they expected. You did not spiral as they had intended. You did not disintegrate as they had anticipated. You climbed in ways that perplexed, annoyed, and finally worried them because your ascent revealed how feeble their assaults really were. What they didn't realize was that heaven pays heed to pressure. God does not just observe what damages you. He keeps track of your responses. Every time you got back up, you made a spiritual statement. They weren't aware they were being judged. Your tenacity became the courtroom. Your perseverance became the witness, and your quiet became the proof that led to their conviction. They felt that survival made you obstinate. They didn't comprehend that living meant you were selected. Your rising did more than simply upset them. It advanced the heavenly time frame. Because God will see that your heart remained pure despite the blows, and your character remained intact despite betrayals. Judgment is no longer postponed. Justice moves more quickly. The consequences become inescapable. Heaven acts rapidly when innocence refuses to perish. Your survival became their condemnation, not because you desired vengeance, but because your perseverance dispelled the myth that they had any real control over your future. You survived the traps. You outlasted the rumors and the agony they used against you. And today, the same tenacity they insulted is the reason God is acting quickly on your behalf. They anticipated to see your downfall, but instead they're seeing your rise. Heaven is enraged because they attempted to bury someone whose purpose was never to be underground. They didn't just injure you. They interfered with whatever heaven had planned. Your life was not unplanned. You carried missions, breakthroughs, and generational duties that demanded your presence, clarity, and strength. When they attempted to bury you emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, or socially, they were not just assaulting you. They were breaking a holy timetable. And this is something heaven takes very seriously. What they didn't realize was that your presence is not optional. You were not sent here to fill voids. You were positioned to shift. Your voice delivers instructions for individuals you have not yet met. Your progress unlocks benefits that spread across the lives of others. So when they attempted to smother you with anguish, perplexity, or shame, heaven saw it as an effort to mute an instrument God intended to use. You were intended to go at a specific pace, healing, finding, developing, and raising. However, they betrayed, cruelly manipulated, and sabotaged. Slow the procedure slowly. And heaven considers delayed purpose a crime, not because God is impatient, but because your purpose is linked to others who rely on your light. When someone assaults you, they are attacking the message that heaven meant to convey through you. Your pain had weight. It influenced doors, relationships, alignments, and choices that were supposed to happen sooner. That is why the anger is so severe, not because you were harmed, rather, because the pain caused spiritual hindrance. God avenges disruptions in his duties. He will not allow anybody interfering with the purpose he has set on your life. They believed they were burying, silencing, or putting you in your place. They did not comprehend that burying a chosen one was a spiritual affront. You were never intended for dirt. You were created to be at the forefront. And heaven will not allow anybody misplace you without penalties. The same pressure that threatened to bury you is now a force pulling you higher. And heaven is cleansing everything. And everyone who attempted to postpone what had already been written for you. A number. Their treatment of you compelled God to demand public recognition for your name. They dragged your name in front of an audience. So God determined that your repair would also have an audience. Nothing that occurred to you was private. Your suffering was debated, magnified, examined, and spread like an unstoppable rumor. People didn't just abuse you. They did it. They exhibited it. They gave you a plot in a drama that they constructed. And since they attempted to maintain your identity in public, heaven has decided to wash it in public as well. God is not restoring you gently because it would not be appropriate given what has happened to you. Quiet would not reveal the falsehoods. Quiet would not fix the deceptive visuals that people were so sure in. Quiet would not convey the lesson that heaven is intended to impart. Touching an innocent soul has effects. You cannot escape from the fact that having your name elevated is not a prize. This is a correction. It's God resetting the narrative they attempted to control. It is a spiritual determination that the truth about you be revealed, not whispered. The same individuals who mocked your collapse will now see your ascent firsthand. Not because you need their approval, but because God wants the reversal to be unmistakable. Their disdain set the scene, their gossip established the platform, and their mocking provided the limelight. They believed they were humiliating you, but they were accidentally creating a setting in which God might demonstrate his vindication. They drove you into the public eye, and now heaven is using that same spotlight to reveal who you really are. The dignity attached to your name is not arrogance. It is justice. It is bliss. restoring what was taken and restoring what was damaged. Every untruth said about you is now in direct confrontation with the reality God is presenting. People will question their preconceptions. They will rethink their decision to participate. They will feel the weight of recognizing they supported the incorrect story. Your name is entering a new season, one in which dignity is essential. Respect comes naturally, whereas honor is divinely decreed. The script is no longer in human hands. Heaven has taken over the writing, and each page leads to repair. They cannot halt, conceal, or deny. Conclusion: everything you went through was not neglected, misinterpreted, or overlooked. Heaven documented every tear, treachery, slander, trap, false accusation, and damage inflicted on you, even though your heart had done nothing to deserve it. You weren't just abused. You were targeted because of the mission you bear. They understood the light you walk with and the spiritual power you possess long before you did. They broke heavenly bounds by assuming there would be no repercussions, that heaven would remain quiet, and that your agony would guarantee their supremacy. But what they didn't realize was that God does not allow brutality to the innocent, particularly when that innocence is linked to a purpose that affects generations. Every assault on you was an attack on the timing, objective, and destiny. Heaven trusted you with their brutality. They revealed their objectives, their manipulation. They revealed their character. They are hypocritical. They exposed their motivations. And your tenacity revealed your actual identity. You did not ascend because you have the strength. They gave heaven enough cause to elevate you. You didn't survive because you were fortunate. You survived because your mission refused to collapse under their weight. Now, the humiliation they expected would bury you has become a platform for your rise. The insult they heaped on your name has compelled heaven to demand public recognition. The interference they caused in your life was the reason God hastened his justice. Every reversal you encounter is not random. It's divine correction. It's heaven repairing what shouldn't have been touched. You were not the victim that they portrayed. You were the task that they underestimated. And in this season, God isn't only cleansing your name. He's rewriting your tale for everyone to see. The vindication will be evident. The honor will be apparent. The climb will be memorable. And the same individuals who previously disregarded you will now bear witness to your rehabilitation. If this spoke to your spirit today, please sure to subscribe to the channel mentioned in the video. Leave your views in the comments and forward this to someone who needs this level of honesty and support. Your sponsorship allows this message to reach more chosen souls who are going through the same fire you have. Always be blessed.